Welcome back, MCU fans. We are coming to you live with another edition of our special rankings as we kick off Phase 3. I'm joined once again by my guy, Tim Carter here. And
Hello, everyone.
Tim, I wanted to review where we ended up with Phase 2.
Sure.
Our average scores and our final average. So to recap, for Phase 1, we ended with an average score for all the films at 6.25.
Sounds appropriate.
Yes. So now that we've wrapped up Phase 2, Iron Man 3 had an average of 8.5, Thor the Dark World had an average score of 4, Captain America Winter Soldier with an average score of 8.5, Guardians 8.5, Age of Ultron 7.25, and Ant-Man 9. So it got an average score of 7.625. So though we've been kind of negative about some of these films, mostly me, the scores did climb in the last phase. So as we embark on Phase 3, I'm hoping that it's the same. With that being said, Phase 3 is quite a few movies.
Yep. 11, I think.
11. It's 11 to be exact. So that may skew the score a little bit and show that our rankings are even more useless than we initially admitted.
Awesome.
But I'm excited about where things are going. And folks at home who aren't keeping tally of the order that these films come out in, today we'll be discussing Captain America Civil War, Doctor Strange, and Guardians 2.
I almost had to correct you because Civil War doesn't seem like a Captain America movie, but we'll get into that.
Let's get into it. Let's get into Civil War. Let's jump in.
All right. Okay. I am going to switch it up. I'm going to actually get my score first. I gave Civil War a 7.5.
Okay.
Because, and it mainly has to do with the Russo brothers. There's no denying that. Well, one, the start of this phase is just, it's a really, really good start to a phase. It gave us some of the most beautiful looking MCU movies to date, both of which are the ones that we're not talking about right now. But yeah, it really comes down to the Russo brothers' direction. The thing that really does it for me for Civil War is the combat is strange. Ever since I can remember in superhero movies, one of the things I thought was just the lamest piece of choreography is to, when superheroes get hit and they fly up against the wall, some have a tendency to like turn 90 degrees and hit the wall like sideways. And there was a lot of that in this movie, and I'm just not feeling it. It's not very believable, first of all, and then it just doesn't it takes away from the impact of the hit, essentially.
I noticed that many of the scenes involving vehicles were very much like the crashes and stuff were very much along the lines of Fast and the Furious-esque, as opposed to the more realistic scenes we've been used to with the MCU. Yeah, and
the one that really gets me is one of the worst examples is the fight in Lagos. Very, very janky. I understand, to move the camera to some degree to like immerse you a little bit, but this was just too much. I almost couldn't look at the camera for a certain amount, for an extended period of time, because it was just so jarring. And then it had some really strange editing. A couple examples that come to mind are when in the beginning in Lagos, when Black Widow catches the bioweapon and she does that weird like kick flip, but it cuts.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, because I noticed that too. This time around.
Yeah.
But the weird thing with that, though, is we were just talking about how fluid her action scenes are in previous movies, and then you get this one that right off the bat you get that.
Right. Yeah, and then the other one for jankiness was also the fight in Berlin when you first get introduced to T'Challa, and the prime example that I'm about to mention happens right after Bucky jumped between buildings onto the roof and was fighting T'Challa. you get this weird like 1 second cut of Steve looking over to Sam. It cuts to Sam and then back to him as he winds up to jump the building too. And it's just very odd editing choices. Yeah, and besides that, there's not really much else that I have wrong with the movie. But it is pretty significant in my eyes. I I rewound the airport scene when they first collided. They were fighting a bit, and then when they did that famous, that famous collision, I rewound it a couple times just to see all the different interactions. Obviously, it was focusing on Cap and Tony mostly,
Mhm.
but I saw Barton shooting off his arrows towards Vision. Wanda was facing off against Spidey as he was shooting webs at her, and it was just so cool. That whole sequence we just need more of.
It was a lot of
Uh,
fun.
yeah, uh, it just adds to the believability and essentially the epicness of the moment when you see people when you see these heroes working off of each other. It brings me back to Age of Ultron when they were guarding that podium that would make the city drop, and they're facing off against Ultron's little robots there, and you saw Scarlet Witch lift one up using her powers, and then Iron Man flying through it. We need more of that. I'm honestly a little over all these like one-on-one battles,
Mhm.
because with these nice and fluid extended fight scenes with all this going on, I feel a little spoiled.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I could definitely see that. Uh, so I gave the film a 7.
Yeah.
Giving us an average of 7.25. I actually remembered liking it a lot more than I do, but for different
Mhm.
reasons. I remember
Yeah.
thinking that the fight scenes were so cool, but I remember the last time I saw that, I did a quick rewatch of this where I was half watching it the last time around that we did this.
Yeah.
So I hadn't, other than that, I hadn't watched it since it was in the theater. And I
Mhm.
remember thinking the scenes were so cool in the theater, but I just sat here, taking notes, watching it. I noticed a lot of those things you mentioned. Um, and there were some things that I really enjoy with this film. Like I love Peter's introduction. I love that we didn't
Yeah,
have to
that
get
was
the
great.
stupid Spider-Man backstory. They did it perfectly.
Mhm.
Aunt May was cast great.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
Tom Holland is just a natural, not just for the role,
Yeah.
but for the chemistry of this film. Uh, and Tony with Aunt May, I love those interactions.
Yeah.
That was just fun. I think that there was a lot of fun to this. Every scene that Spider-Man was in, I really liked. I enjoyed
Mhm.
that component.
Yeah.
We had so much darkness in a lot of these films, and Ant-Man kind of brought us out of that, with the humor. And I was happy that they continued the humor.
And
Uh,
Spidey was in it just enough.
yeah,
It was a really nice short introduction to him before his own movies.
yeah, and it was when you say just enough, it could have gotten annoying
Yeah,
if they pushed it anymore, but they
I
didn't.
agree.
I appreciate that. I'd be lying if I'd said I didn't get a little teary eyed when T'Challa took the screen.
Oh
Not
yeah.
that I didn't remember it happening, but just, I mean, we've talked about it on many different
Mhm.
platforms, but me
Yeah.
waiting for Black Panther to appear in any movie, anything it was just so cool to see. But then just Chadwick, being on screen and stuff like that. And
It's great because that 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 shot of him with the sun against his back, shielding his claws like a fucking badass.
yes,
Um, and yeah, they say Chadwick is T'Challa, and
yeah,
that was the only thing that I could think of. That was the only thing rushing over me in the moment. And anytime he talked with his mask on, I was just, oh my god, it's so badass.
beautiful. It was epic.
He has the perfect voice for under the mask.
Oh yeah,
Uh, yeah,
no, it was absolutely stunning. It was beautiful. It took me back to that moment. I remember being like, "Oh, it's amazing." And I remember the first time I saw it in the theater, I couldn't really focus on anything else. I'm like, "Holy shit, the Black Panther is finally on the screen!"
yeah,
And focusing on things this time around, the story, when you sit back and look at it, doesn't make a ton of sense. So why each hero took each side doesn't make a
Yeah.
whole lot of sense. Uh,
No.
and to be quite honest, none of them really had a stake in anything other than
Right.
Iron Man and Cap. So it's like,
Yeah. And they
all right,
just kind
cool.
of pulled these teams together.
Yeah,
I That's one thing that always came to mind every time I watched the movie is like Cap has more of a well put together team than Iron Man. Iron Man, you got T'Challa who's just out to get Bucky for his own vengeance. You got Spider Man who just got dragged into it. Black Widow who's on the fence. Um, his only real allies are Rhodey and Vision.
yeah. Well, in the absurdity of it's made clear when Hawkeye and Black Widow are fighting and they're talking like, "Are we
Yeah,
still cool after this?" So I like that they reference just how it makes no sense, even if that was unintentional.
right.
But that part always just kind of irks me because, Civil War comics, it made sense. Uh,
Yeah,
this, it's like, all right, cool. They pulled people together. We need to see them on. I enjoy the fight scenes, but from
yeah,
a story standpoint, it's like, what the hell? Like, your viewer's smarter than that. Like, give us something more. They're
yeah,
smarter than that.
yeah. And circling back to the Spider Man thing, and how you said it was, and how he said it was just enough. Um, yeah, it is just enough because, like I mentioned in the beginning, it doesn't feel like a Captain America movie.
Right.
Yeah, he's mainly helping out Bucky, but Tony's just in as much of the movie as he is. Um, and yeah, coming out of Winter Soldier, it just doesn't feel the same.
Yeah, and I think I even texted you. I forgot how much of a dick Cap is
You did,
when I was
yeah,
watching that because, I mean, not only did he do Tony dirty, but him and Bucky have a ton of shit to hash out before he just goes and lends himself to that. I get the
yeah,
friend part, I get the brainwash part, I get all of that, but him and Tony have quite an investment as well, and it's the investment
yeah.
of saving the world. And so, in some ways, his sense of loyalty is quite skewed, which it also is in the comics, and I appreciate that angle. It's just interesting to do in a Cap movie, and then they try to wrap it all up nicely with this stupid letter at the end, like, "Oh, okay, we're cool, we're cool." Nah,
Yeah,
man, you crushed the guy's heart with your fucking shield.
yeah,
So the writing in the film does irk me a little bit. I know we knew what we were getting when we signed on. We knew where it was all leading. I know they had to get us there. So a lot of characters introduced for all these phases. I get all of that. So I can't knock them too
including
much for that. But what's that?
including my Sokovian boy. It
Yes,
was, re-
yes,
it was
yes.
really, it's really cool to see these heroes. And I mentioned this with Sam in Winter Soldier to see where they started and compared to where they are now. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was good seeing Daniel Bruhl again.
I think that I was really upset with how they did Zemo the first couple times I saw it, but I think that it was
I enjoyed it. I
I
always
enjoyed it
enjoyed it.
much more this time around. I don't know if it's because we got spoiled by getting him back in Falcon and Winter Soldier, so I can accept it
Yeah.
now. I mean, he played the role perfectly, and it really
Mhm.
wasn't about him. And he even acknowledges in the one scene, it's not about him. It's when he's talking to T'Challa, and it's not about
Yeah.
him. It was about getting them to hate each other, basically. And I actually, that scene between the two of them was one of my favorite scenes in the MCU. I just
Yeah.
like that brief interaction.
Hmm.
Um, so there was a lot to like. The writing is what killed it for me. I think the acting was great. The chemistry was spot on in this film.
Yeah.
And some of the fight scenes were cool, like the one with Cap and Bucky, fighting in the apartment building, that stuff. There's lots of love there. And, I was wondering if my 7 was too harsh, but to be honest, it's just a visually appealing movie with a few
Yeah.
standout moments. So
All right.
I go with a
Yeah.
7 with it. It's not that I hated it. There's just, I think that there could have been a lot careful rewrites before
Yeah.
releasing. Um,
Yeah. Despite all these filmmaking faux pas, in from my personal opinion, that I believe carry over into Infinity War and Endgame.
yes.
Um, it You can't deny that it's an amazingly it's an amazing movie that's also an incredible milestone. Um, it's like that pivotal moment in the whole MCU, really,
Yeah.
where things are just changed forever. As cliche of a saying as it is.
It's the truth though. It's the reality.
Yeah.
It was also the beginning of all of our team up fights, which I'll talk more about this as we get to the movies that were all focused
Mhm.
on the team ups, but
Yeah.
it was the beginning of me disliking team up fights. So it's like while you say we need more, I'm like, yes, absolutely we do. And then they just went kind of downhill from there, but
Right.
there's still some good moments to be had in all those. So you went 7.5, I went 7, not terrible. It's not a terrible
No,
start. We've had worse. And then we move on to Doctor Strange. And I know you love you some Sorcerer Supreme.
I
And
do very much so.
but I'm wondering if you love the movie starring your
I do not.
guy.
I'm actually giving this a 7, because it's far from how I remember it and how good it really was. Um, I'm going to go ahead and say that any part involving Tilda Swinton as the Ancient One is my favorite. She is bar none one of my top 3 favorite characters in the MCU. And she nailed it every scene she was in, despite all the fanboys rushing to say how she's not an Asian guy,
Right,
as
right.
he's depicted in the comics. But oh god, that scene when he first comes to Kamertage, and I could just listen to a voiceover of her all day. Him going through all those different dimensions and all that, like, vision, and that trip that he was having. It was just so beautifully haunting, and very, very foreboding, that I watched it 3 times over. I can't get enough of that scene. But overall, I don't have as much to say about this as I do with Civil War. The humor is really dry. A lot of Burlington Coat Factory's dialogue doesn't really hit. His humor is awful. The only the only people who made jokes that I actually laughed at was Wong.
I was just gonna
Um,
say Wong is the
yeah,
saving.
yeah, and it's gotten a lot better in recent movies where it's just the two of them. Um, Caecilius was an awful villain. I love Mads Mikkelsen, but they underutilized him.
Mhm.
You were just talking about how the MCU was too dark. I felt like they should have gone darker with Dormammu, and I feel like they should have made him more of a cult instead of just this really vague villain, being followed around by these, like, high school looking lackeys.
You know, you're the third person this week I've talked to that brought that up about it needing to be darker,
Yeah.
which I find interesting
Well,
and true.
yeah, because not only is it very just boring, it sets up more contrast to what Steven needs to do, and just a better contrast of what side he's on.
Right.
Um, but again, very, very visually beautiful.
Also,
And
when you
yeah,
talk about Dormammu,
yeah.
did you count how long he was on screen for?
Um, I'm assuming you did. I did
I
not.
didn't count exactly, but I knew that because I had to pause it at the moment that he was on because I had
Hmm.
to tend to a certain little person who
Yeah.
needed to go to bed. And there was like no time left in the movie. And
Mhm.
so it's interesting that that's the big bad this was all building up to.
Yeah.
And it was like 8 minutes of screen time. So, which mostly was just Doctor Strange doing things. So
Mhm.
it's quite interesting that that's what got like that's how they chose to end it, you know, in terms of
Yeah.
villains and build up. But I just thought that was an interesting thing. I didn't mean to interrupt you on that.
Oh no, you're fine. I hope they retcon the shit out of that, because that's obviously not Dormammu. I honestly thought that was Thanos at first
Yeah.
because of the purple ridges, just being like projected in some way. Um, it was just, oh god, it was awful. I thought that was a very cheap way to end the movie. This was back when I first saw it. Um, I was just so underwhelmed by the movie. Then it got better, and then now it slowly got worse again. Um, so yeah, and then the other issue that I found with it is I feel like they really, really rushed Steven's training, and I wish he didn't go into Infinity War. I mean, hmm, I guess it was necessary for him to go into Infinity War as a Sorcerer Supreme. I just wish they had introduced him earlier and extended the his training. So like it actually, I don't know, gives him a little bit of conflict because I know he excels, he's intelligent, but goddamn, I bet it just feels rushed.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Um, so we asked our viewers
Oh, I forgot about
for
this. Yeah.
the worst villain, and I think now's a good time to talk about it before I dive
Mhm.
into my take on it.
Sure.
Um, Simply because there's a reason why I asked that question. It's because I think we may have arguably gotten our worst villain in this with Dormammu. So
Yeah.
Eric Marshall, Cody White, and Dan Brockway all said Malekith and Aldrich Killian, which I know that you gave them a
I I actually really love Killian, and yeah,
you gave them a little sass for that one, I recall.
yeah, all the sass. They deserve all the sass. But
Shit.
Malekith, I will agree on.
Yeah, it was a bad one. And to be honest, I thought that Dormammu and Malekith was going to be mine, but I think I actually got mine from somebody else on this list.
Oh yeah,
Sherry Nutter Timothy gave us Ultron and or Thanos, which I could see both.
really?
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of either one of those. Also,
Oh,
um,
interesting.
Ali Abdul Adil gave us the Mandarin, which I know that's a common one for many folks.
Mhm.
But I do know that upon rewatches, many folks aren't as mad about it. I will say that much. Paul Brenner gave us, he said Yellowjack was awful. Caecilius was pretty bad, but
Or-
Jude Law's Jan Rog and Captain Marvel probably take the
Yes,
cake. And I
yes,
despise that character so much, and I did not like the movie so much that I actually forgot all about that character, but he is
yeah,
correct. That is
yeah,
the worst villain thus far.
yeah.
I have to go with that. And then Dormammu is second for me.
Mhm.
Um, I'm gonna be honest, and I think I messaged you this, that I don't hate it as much as I did. Um, I think so. Benedict Cumberbatch is so good at being an asshole um, that it makes me dislike the character because he's a dickhead the whole movie. Um, Even
Yeah,
in those moments where he should be having those like coming to light moments or should be a bit more humble than he is. I know humility is not his thing. You'd expect by the end of the film for him to kind of get to a certain level of that without going against the character. I think that um, there is a big difference between the comics and the movies, and so I'd want to see that in a movie, almost to make me want to see this character again.
yeah.
So that piece is tough for me, but he plays it so well. It's
He
clear
really does, though.
that that's what his job was to do, and he plays it well. It's just not a
Mhm.
character I tend to lean towards enjoying.
Yeah.
I would say the attempts at humor were very dry, but I think that also kind of fits him. So it's kind of one of those, they played to the actor's strengths in some ways.
It
And
fits. I just wish there was more to connect with the audience.
yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah.
I did like the chemistry, when it was those moments of like him and Wong, things like that. And
Him and
I
Wong and also him and Rachel McAdams worked really well together as well.
they did, but she also felt so pointless to me in the film. It's like
Yes.
she could have been so much more in that movie, and
Yes.
they just didn't use her. I mean, she could have been just like Natalie Portman in the Thor movies, where she's actually along for the journey. She's part of the ride, not just in this really cool, well done hospital scene.
Yeah.
That fight scene's awesome.
Yeah.
I really do like that. There's a lot lacking for the film for me, but I do think there's some stuff to love. I like that fight scene is great. I think that Mordo was done really, really well, actually.
We'll
Uh,
see if he can actually comes back though, because I think we're too deep in the multiverse stuff to be able to introduce another villain, despite what that end credit scene did for him.
or is he in the thick of the
Eh,
movie?
eh.
Or it's
I feel like
Mephisto?
I feel like it might be. I feel like it might be a little over encumbered, but then again, who knows?
At the end of the day, we're still going to get more Doctor Strange after that. So just because doesn't appear in the second one doesn't mean he won't appear at all too.
Right.
And since we have a multiverse, he could appear in somebody else's movie after that. So I mean, it leads to a lot of different possibilities. If
That's
we
very true.
don't see him again, that was a huge waste of an end credit scene.
Yes.
Um,
And a
which
waste
no,
of a good actor too.
yeah, he played that role very well.
Yes.
I agree with you about Tilda. I think she was excellent for that role. I yeah, I don't know, just when she was on screen doing her thing, it just really worked for me.
Yeah.
Um,
I almost hopped out of my chair when I saw her in Endgame.
I would have liked to have seen more representation, but at the end of the day, I think casting also was spot on for that, just in terms of what the film needed. Uh, it got a 6.5 for me,
Oh yeah.
and yeah, I there's just you know, I didn't love it. I didn't hate it as much as I thought I did. It just didn't do it for me overall.
Yeah. Not
It's
like
like
you used to.
yeah, it's not like on my list of oh, I can't wait to watch that again, like some of these other films
Yeah.
are. Even though I know it doesn't sound like any of those films are like that for me, there are some, I
Mhm.
promise. Um, yeah, it was okay. I didn't hate it as much as I thought I did. I enjoyed more of it. I wasn't on my phone the whole time this time like I
Yeah.
was for previous rewatches. So it did draw me in a little bit. But I'm also looking at the Doctor Strange arc we've got so far, and he's still just an asshole. Like at some point, I hope they break that for him, and I hope that it's in the multiverse where he becomes a concerned citizen as opposed to just this
Yeah.
self-righteous prick. Even though, like again, he plays the character very well. I just hope that
And
they give him a different direction for this character.
um and it wasn't until this viewing that I actually I don't know, I guess they just didn't do a really good job of hitting the theme home. Uh it was very, very subtle, and again I didn't put two and two together until I saw it this time. But the fact that he was able to drop his pride and get stuck in that time loop with Dormammu and be okay with losing over and over and over, um, because and that ties back to what the ancient one was saying about it, it wasn't his quest for greatness, it was his fear of failure.
Right.
um, yeah, and it's just disappointing that it took me this long to figure it out, but again, it was also very subtle
Yeah, I
and
I just
muddled.
yeah, I think there could have been a lot more explored self-awareness and
Yeah.
humility on the screen, at least by the end of the film, than just the inference, I guess. So that was my biggest drawback, I think, because it makes it hard to enjoy the character on the screen, despite how well he plays him. So I just hope they write him in a different direction moving forward because I've yet to enjoy him
Yeah.
on the screen yet. Um, but I don't want to be too much of a downer, so let's jump into
Yeah,
Guardians
no,
of the
not at
Galaxy
all.
Volume 2.
Yeah.
Volume 2, my friend.
Yes, sir.
Thoughts?
It's the better one, but I'm gonna let you go first.
It's the better of the two Guardians?
Yes. Yes.
Oh my. We differ there.
Yes. What?
Uh,
I gave
yes,
the same opinion the last time we did this.
we will fight to the death with words.
Okay, let's
Uh,
do it.
I like the development of Peter. I actually, this time around, I've been watching the movies through the lens of Rocket in all his appearances, and the redemption story this character is on, and the watching him get a heart like the Grinch, as his story just continues. It's so cool to watch it through those eyes, as opposed to the Peter storyline or the Gamora Nebula storylines. I really do love that, and I think James Gunn captures that very well. I did not like Ego, to be honest. There are some great scenes, like the scene where they're playing ball, and that's fun to me. Uh, I don't know. It's just something about it was weak to me, and I can't put my finger on it. I do think that there was a lot of fun, with like the Pac-Man and like the scene where they're actually fighting
Yeah.
Ego, like going to the
Well,
center. I enjoy that. I love the team up there, Drax and Mantis together. I actually would love like a sitcom with those two.
well, just circling back real quick. Could it be because he wasn't actually a living planet and took on like a human manifestation the whole movie?
That part of that does bug me,
Yeah.
but it's just like they jump from "Yeah, I'm your father" to "Here's the power" to "Fight me." Like it's it's that very rushed development. It's not a rushed movie until you get to those interactions, and then until you get to the
Hmm.
ego part. That's the part that really gets me, simply because a lot of it doesn't make sense. I love the scene. So Baby Groot's done for me. I'm past Baby Groot,
Yeah,
but
it's on to baby Stay Puft now
oh god,
with
yeah.
the new
But
Ghostbusters.
with Groot going to retrieve all of the stuff, I thoroughly enjoyed that scene. When he's going to try and get
Hmm.
Yandu's headpiece there, I love that. Um, it was just fun. I giggled out loud. Uh, I think Craiglin is awesome in this film. I'm glad he got more of a chance to shine.
I love Craiglin so much.
And
It's a shame because I was actually set to meet him. Him and Michael Rooker were coming to a local con out in
yep,
Niagara Falls, and then COVID happened, and
I was planning on going.
my pops sit on my shelf unsigned.
Yep. No, that was definitely a bummer. And I was looking forward to that. But I mean, the cool stuff on here, I mean, that Yandu scene
Oh,
was just masterful.
that's-
And
yeah.
I'm brought to tears every time with that funeral. And God, it's such a great scene. But then, I mean, I'm Mary Poppins, y'all. Like, how classic is that? But it doesn't
Yeah.
get old. Um,
Yeah, all they need to do was play Cat Stevens's father and son, and that crushed me.
Yep. Yeah, I love the Yandu arc in this movie. And it's also cool because they pair Yandu with the original Guardians of the Galaxy. You got
Yeah,
Starhawk there and Sly Stallone,
yeah.
and you got his crew. So it's because there were a lot of detractors, like comic book fans, after the first one, like, well, why didn't we get the actual Guardians? So it's cool
Hmm.
to see them brought back in the fashion that they were.
Yeah,
That's a lot of fun, actually. And the taser face stuff, I enjoy that a lot too. That was funny to me. Um,
yeah.
that's
But they didn't push it.
right, right.
They didn't push it, and they ended it very nicely.
There's a lot to love for this film in terms of the emotional connectivity, in terms of the character development. It's huge, especially the Gamora and Nebula characters there.
Yeah.
And seeing Drax make jokes and care and have empathy, very in a very subtle manner, but it's huge. And I just really enjoy that. And I like the writing in this film too, except for when it comes to the ego interaction.
Mhm.
And part of me feels, the movie wasn't actually about that. Like, yeah, Peter needed to get past this, but the movie was really about them as a team, as a family, which they even
Right.
talk about. And
Yeah.
that
It's a,
component is so
the
great.
central theme of them.
Yeah. And I think that part was done so well. I could have almost done without a villain in some ways and just had that.
Yeah.
Like, I could have had like the movie shot in the style of like Parenthood, the TV show, and I would have been like perfectly content. Um, I do think it relied on the music a bit too much, and I guess the wrap up with the song, the mom, and all that stuff. Yeah, it's kind of cool, but the beauty of the soundtrack from the first one is that it was just fun. This was a movie based on a soundtrack in some ways with the way that they did it, so that bugged me a little bit.
Mhm.
I think Kurt Russell did a great job. It's just I don't think that the plot and the character were written that well. It was very rushed. So I gave it an 8 because I do enjoy many elements of it,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of takeaways from it, and it's still up there. And well, I say top 10 Guardians or top 10 Marvel movies, but there's only
Mhm.
21. So, but yeah, I enjoyed it. It's just that the ego part really takes away
Yeah.
from me. Outside of that, just fantastic movie. I do love the soundtrack, regardless of my thoughts on how it drives the movie. The Ravagers are great. It gave a lot of the minor characters chances to shine in ways that the first didn't, in ways that other movies didn't give their secondary and third characters ways to shine. So I really appreciate that about it. Very excited about the third one. I'm even excited about the Christmas special. It's a lot of fun, to be completely honest. So I'll stop rambling. It gets an 8 from me. Tim, my
Okay.
friend, what are your thoughts?
All right. This is my favorite movie in the MCU. I'll go ahead and say it. I'm gonna get the bad out of the way first and let that lie. The intro dialogue felt forced. Um, when when Kurt Russell was leading Peter's mom down to see the plant, and he goes, come on, my Tiger Lily. It just felt very forced,
Mhm.
and a little cringe. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
And same with when you're first introduced to the Guardians too. When it pans in on Peter and he goes, "Showtime, a-holes," and then there's this long awkward pause where I can just see James Gunn be like, "eh, call them a-holes." It's funny, and that's really about it. That's a minor nitpick, but that's essentially where it ends. I love this movie so damn much. I love the soundtrack. I started listening to it, in the car on the way to work, on road trips, and I can't stop hearing it. Everywhere I go, the store that I work above plays it. I can hear it through the floorboards. My LCS will put on 70s music, and literally all the songs would appear on there throughout the day, and I'm not even the least bit upset. Brandy is one of my all-time favorite songs now, as is Wham Bam Shang-a-Lang.
Yes.
And yeah, it was just an overall better soundtrack to me, and I thought it was perfectly integrated into the story, especially with the use of the reprises with Fleetwood Mac and with the Chain, and then Wham Bam Shang-a-Lang. Just the use of reprises just always brought a smile to my face every time, when Peter goes to fight Ego for the last time, and when the Sovereign entered the core of Ego. It was so good. And it got a little slow towards the middle, but it was that really necessary character building, and I'm glad that was the focus of the movie.
Yeah.
Because it gave me exactly what I wanted. I wanted to learn more about these people, and each one of these characters just has perfect chemistry with every one of the others. Peter and Ego, Peter and Gamora, Peter and Rocket, Drax and Mantis, Mantis and Gamora, Nebula and the Ravagers. It was just so well done. And again, just a beautiful, beautiful movie, probably even more so than Doctor Strange, in my opinion. And I had a really, really hard time coming up with a score for this, but I think it's gonna get a 9.5.
Whoa, high praise.
Yep. I know you said two of your students were connecting with me on my choice of rankings, and I feel like with all three, that's going to be a little bit of a different situation this time around.
Or who knows? They just like to tell me to go after myself. So, high praise there. I love your connection to it.
Yes.
I love when you're passionate about certain
Yeah.
films. And I love how passionate you are about Peter Quill.
Oh my God. He's my boy, and
so we're off to a mixed bag of a start so far.
Yeah,
and that's cool because
I like it.
It's a really fun phase with a lot of stuff to watch. And
yeah, absolutely.
Coming up, we have what's probably going to be my favorite chunk of movies to talk about. Listen to this block.
Naturally.
We have Spider-Man Homecoming, Thor Ragnarok, and Black Panther.
Ooh.
And tell me that just doesn't delight you to watch over the next week.
Who knows? I'll let you know next week.
And I'm pumped. This is the most excited I've been going into any phase. I also coincidentally rewatched Ant-Man again after we had talked about it.
Really?
I forgot just how much I enjoy a lot of the interactions among those characters. So there's just certain moments I really enjoy. So I'm stoked. Not that I need to watch Black Panther or Ragnarok again. I think I've seen each at least 50 times. But I'll never fall.
What's one more time?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, and no, man, it's been a blast. I love getting the interaction that we're getting from people who have their thoughts and opinions. And I get texts and like Facebook messages from people about what we talk about. Please, folks, leave your comments on the page
Yes.
so we can talk about it. So it's public now.
Yes.
You
We don't want to
roasting
hear
me.
crickets. We want to hear you.
Yes, you roasting me to my face is no fun. Roast me online so that the world can see it.
And you can roast me too. I got a backbone.
Oh yeah.
I want to hear it. I want to hear why I'm wrong.
Make it happen. So Tim, my friend, until we meet again,
Yes, sir.
I look forward to our next block. We're nearing the end. If you really think about it, it's only a few more weeks left of
Unfortunately.
this, and then
Yeah.
I think maybe we'll do a recap of thoughts on MODOK, at some point, and
We can.
then Black Widow will be here unless it gets pushed to next
Sure.
year.
And then all the Disney Plus series.
Yeah, so we got some time, my friend.
Yeah.
And I do enjoy this special time with you. So
Me too. It's the highlight of my week, as I tell you every week.
until we meet again, thank you.
Absolutely, sir.